Hey everyone. There was an incident in a wealthy Ohio neighborhood recently, and this has blown up into a huge viral story. It just demanded to be covered. You're about to see why. So this all started last November, about 6 p.m. the evening of Tuesday, the 19th to be exact, when a mother of two young children named Michelle Bishop was going for a run. She notices a truck slowing down behind her, and then the man inside the truck pokes his head out of the window and asks if he can help her. Michelle, who says she was concerned by the man's behavior, took her children to the front door of the nearest home she could find and rang the doorbell. The Ring camera on the house she approached picked up the following footage of the incident.
Knock on the doorbell. Ring doorbell. We need you. What's going on?
Do you live here?
Yeah.
You do?
Papa.
I don't believe that.
What?
I don't believe that.
So what are you doing?
Rory, come on. Rory, come on.
Hey.
The second part of the footage picks up a few minutes later as Michelle's husband approaches this same house to try and smooth things over with the family. As it turns out, this man wasn't lying at all. That really was his house, and he had only slowed down behind Michelle to pull into his own driveway.
Did someone come here?
That was my wife. She got somebody chased her up here, and she had the kids.
Who chased her?
She said somebody in a
There was a
silver
guy
truck.
in a gray truck, and he came
So
around the corner,
I don't
and
know if you guys have a
I was in
link.
the street, and so I come up, and I just have my kids, and so I'm like gonna pretend that I'm coming home, and so I pull up and I start walking to your back gate, and he stops here and he goes, "Are you looking for someone?" And I said, "Nope," and then he sat here, and I was like, "I need to get in."
Well, that's my husband. That's why he lives here. Yeah. He lives here. So he came in and he said there's a lady screaming, and I'm like, that's...
She got all worried that she
Scared the crap out of me.
How?
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
How did he scare you,
I
though?
had a feel.
I just seen her in the driveway and I was like, are you looking for somebody? Because I was pulling up out
And I
home.
saw someone walking in our driveway, too, and I'm like, why is someone walking in our driveway?
Well, I'm
Well, there
sorry.
we go. All right, sorry.
What?
I don't.
She said that someone was following her. So you were walking from there?
You came this way, didn't you?
No, I came down this street right here.
Yeah.
And I was riding slow because I'm looking at our Christmas lights.
Well, you just have to understand my point of view. Being by myself with two kids, I just saw a car coming, and so I was like, oh, it scared me, and so I just pulled up here, and I kept thinking, this could be his house. But you didn't say, this is my home. You just said, are you looking? And I was like,
I did. When you was on the porch, you asked me, did I live here? I said, yeah.
And you said, no, you don't.
She seems to have told a couple lies here already. She apparently told her husband that this guy had chased her when he hadn't, actually. And then she tries to say, well, why didn't you just say you lived here when, like, he very clearly did. This wasn't a super long interaction. I don't know, maybe she was just so freaked out that she didn't remember.
And you said, I don't think you do.
It was obviously you could tell that I was really caught off guard.
Like, I'm pulling in my... It's like I'm pulling in my house. Like, this neighborhood is probably one of the best neighborhoods in Ohio.
It is.
You don't have to worry about stuff like that.
Well, I'm very sorry. I really hope that you're not upset with me.
Come on, baby, go in the house. Let's go.
You told me that I didn't. You said you didn't think I live here.
It was the way that you were talking. I was so caught off guard. I'm so sorry.
The family who lived at that house, a sprawling, custom-built luxury estate in one of Ohio's wealthiest and safest neighborhoods, was the Jenkins family, headed by a very successful, wealthy business owner, real estate developer. I think he said he was an electrical engineer, named DeMichael, who designed the custom home they're living in himself for his wife Brittany and their two children. While this incident happened over 2 months ago now, the footage wasn't posted to their community Facebook page for this neighborhood. It was about 500 residents in there until roughly 2 weeks ago, and has since made its way all around the internet. All the internet sleuths got a hold of it, the cultural war people got a hold of it. It seems to have just started with a post on X from an account called Raindrops Media, and just kind of took off from there. Users questioned what DeMichael had even done to warrant the fear this woman had apparently felt, and most people concluded that this was a classic example of a wealthy Karen racially profiling a black man. Now, almost immediately following a ton of backlash and said internet sleuths discovering her online fitness brand, The Lady's Edge, which was bombarded, of course, with bad reviews.
People texting me personally, calling me a racist pig, our direct messages, our other businesses, Crave, is being attacked.
She took to her Facebook page to offer a 28-minute My Side of the Story video. And I'm not going to play the whole thing. I've condensed it down so that you don't have to. But it really is quite something.
So I went out and we're jogging, and I was on the back end of the neighborhood that's newer construction, and it's dark. There's not many lights back there. A lot of new builds, not homes that are established. And so I'm turning, and I kept telling Rory, she's like wanting to stop, and I'm like, this isn't an area to stop. Like, let's get through to the main part of the neighborhood. So we got our Christmas music on, and we're jogging, and we're turning the circle, and I can see down our main drag, and I see car lights. And so Mom sensor, I was just like, car. There weren't many cars out, and I just saw those headlights. Just random thought. I was like, car. And so as we're running, I see the headlights behind me. And so I, like any of us have been taught, I think a lot of women have been taught, hey, if you ever, feel unsafe or you feel cars approaching, go to the closest house that is nearby and just pretend that it's yours.
Okay, if you feel unsafe from the car approaching, but you don't specify what it is about this car approaching you that made you feel unsafe. What made it different from... Is it that any time a car approaches you while you're out walking, you run to whichever door and pretend it's your house? How many times a day do you do this?
So that's exactly what I did. I see headlights. I don't even look to see what the car looks like. I just see headlights behind me, and I'm like, I gotta get us off the street. Didn't even think much of it. So I take my stroller and I get in the grass and go on the sidewalk, and the car starts to slow behind us. And which I was like, okay, he's slowing down. So I'm walking forward and I tell Rory, hey, turn here. And so she turns, and I said, don't look back, but just turn here. And so she has no idea, what I'm doing or why I'm doing it, but she's walking up the sidewalk. And so the car continues to slow. I'm not looking backwards, but then I hear words say, can I help you with something? And it wasn't super friendly. It was, and I get it. Like, what are you doing? Like, can I help you with something? And I was like, oh my gosh, why is this person talking to me? Like, why is he at the bottom of the thing talking to me? And so I don't respond, and then I keep walking. And I push the jogger. The garage doors were open. The gates were open to the garage. And I remember thinking, praise God, somebody's home. Praise God, somebody's home. And by this time, I'm like, can you just drive away? Like, this is my house. And so I push my buggy up into the door just a little bit, and he says, can I help you with something? And I said, nope. And then I take my stroller and I start walking up the sidewalk to the front door. And I remember telling Roy, I'm like, hey, go. So I'm like, now walking down, and I'm turning up this driveway, and it says, are you looking for someone? And at this point, he's like further by the driveway, and I said, no. And he said a second time, are you looking for someone? And so it was becoming a little more stern. And I said, no. And so I'm taking the baby jogger, and I am pushing it up the stairs. There's like a couple stairs to get up.
So this sort of takes us to where the footage that we just watched began. And I couldn't help but notice she's explaining these things in a way that seems like it's designed to make it understandable why she was scared, but I'm listening to her explanation here, and none of this stuff seems inconsistent with what like a person would do if they actually lived at the house.
And I was like, my radar was like, nope, I don't think that this is your house. And so I said, I don't believe that this is your house. And so I'm starting to unbuckle Cash, and I grab and I freak. I go, Rory, run. And so I take off the porch and I literally run as fast as I can. Screaming at the top of my lung. I've never, ever screamed the way that I screamed. And I'm running through the front yards of everybody, praying that the Ring doorbell would capture us. Finally, to get to a woman's house, I'm banging on the door. And at this point, I'm dialing 911, and I said, can I please come in? And the woman said, yes, come in. And so I'm staying there, I'm talking to the sheriff. And so the woman then, I was at her house, she literally asked me and said, she said, I don't know how to ask this. She goes, but was it a black man? Because she goes, it's a black family that lives there. And I said, no, I believe that this is a white man. He was a white man in a truck. A young white man is what I said. And she said, okay. She goes, because that's a black family that lives there. And I said, no, I don't think that it was a black man. But she wrote a letter. She was like, I'm happy to speak on your behalf. You absolutely told me that you thought it was a white man.
The comments on her lengthy explanation video here were not friendly. She was accused of failing to take responsibility, of playing the victim, and of lying about what really happened. Personally, the explanation for why she felt so threatened was kind of the thing that never quite clicked for me throughout her explanation. She kept referencing that it was dark and late, but it was 6 o'clock, a normal time for people to be coming home, not remotely like a spooky time of night. You're in an extremely safe neighborhood. You hear Mr. Jenkins say this is one of the safest, wealthiest neighborhoods in Ohio, and you hear her agree, so she also believes that. But she felt comfortable taking her young children around this street in the first place, and her husband felt comfortable letting her. So after she put this whole thing out, the Jenkins family decided to tell their own story, and they have a very different way of looking at things here.
I was leaving one of my real estate job sites in the inner city, wrapping it up for the day. It was about 5:15. Took me about 45 minutes to get home. So I'm pulling up, checking out my Christmas lights we just put up for the holiday season. And there happens to be a lady in the driveway with 2 kids. So I don't think nothing of it. Kids coming in and out of my house all the time. I got kids, got a family over here. I don't think nothing of it. I think she's looking for the front door. I say, hey, are you looking for somebody? She doesn't answer. She then proceeds to go to the porch. So I'm like, okay, so she's probably coming over. So I pull in the driveway. I'm about to park, and she rings the doorbell and comes to the front of the front porch and stops me and says, do you live here? And I said, yeah, I live here. She said, well, I don't think so. So I said, well, what are you doing here? She says, I don't think you live here. Picks the kid up, drops the stroller, hops off the porch, starts running, and I hear screaming, yelling for help. At that point, now I'm in fear. I'm in fear because I know what we face as Black men in America. So I rush to the garage, park in the garage, come in the house. My wife's in the office. I said, babe, some white Caucasian lady, she just jumped off our front porch, screaming, yelling for help. I don't know if she's going to call the police. I'm pacing back and forth. I don't know what's about to happen.
What do you mean there's a white woman running screaming for help? Screaming for help for what? He's like, I don't know. And immediately my heart dropped. I'm like walking and pacing back and forth. Like, okay, just wait. Okay, well, what happened? Nothing. I was just pulling in the house. And I keep opening up the door because I feel like the police is going to come here. Somebody is about to come here, and I don't know what's going to happen.
The couple is then asked why it is they decided to post the footage to their community Facebook page so long, 2 months after the incident had happened. What compelled them to do so?
I thought the next day maybe there would be some flowers at the door saying, not once had this person reached out to us to give us a sincere apology.
Wait, whoa.
HOA.
I reached out to HOA immediately after it happened.
Nobody said anything?
Immediately after it happened, I reached out.
So the Jenkins family put this on the community Facebook page after not getting what they considered a real apology from this woman, even after all that time. They felt slighted by the fact that they felt wronged by this woman, that she had racially profiled them, and that she hadn't properly apologized for doing so. So that interview where they allege she doesn't apologize is released by Nightcap on January 21st, and Michelle must have watched it because on January 23rd she issued a much shorter and very dramatic video on her Facebook page where she says she is reiterating her apology, but also to detail the flood of threats that she and her family have apparently been dealing with.
So first and foremost, DeMichael and Brittany Jenkins, from the bottom of my heart and my family's heart, I am so sorry for the way that I made you guys feel that night. I understand why you felt that way. I get it. I truly do. It was the worst timing and the biggest misunderstanding. We now that the video is aired and people are thinking that it was some malicious racial profiling or incident, our family is receiving hundreds, if not thousands, of threats. Every single one of our businesses is seeing devastation. One of our businesses has temporarily had to close because of threats. Our family is receiving threats through every avenue that you could possibly reach us, through phone calls, through text messages, through direct messages, and some of those threats that my husband is going to come home to no wife and to being a single dad. That I should be hung publicly.
I mentioned this before, but this became like a big culture war online fight. And one said culture warrior, a conservative commentator named Matt Walsh, wrote a post claiming that this was a simple misunderstanding by a skittish, concerned mom, had nothing to do with his race, and that this was a mountain made from a molehill, essentially. But another conservative commentator named Brandon Tatum decided to actually have Michelle and her husband on for an interview. And in that interview, the plot thickens when they challenge the assertions made in the Jenkins interview.
Through mutual friends in the neighborhood, it has been, we have tried to reconcile things with them in the beginning. Do they want to talk? We had somebody go over there with a handwritten statement from the woman who lived in that house, showing them that there was no intent here, no racial intent on their behalf. Can we orchestrate a meeting with you guys, which they denied. They did not want to pursue any meeting with us. This was right after we found out that this has become an issue. So
Not even national stuff.
John brought it to me, and right away we're trying to orchestrate, having a mutual friend set this up, sit down with them. They did not want to do that. They did not care about the handwritten letter at that point. And so the next day, it was taken, maybe the next day or two. Nonetheless, it was very quickly. The Ring doorbell footage was brought to the Facebook page with this same understanding about unity.
So according to Michelle and her husband here, they did try to reach out and use all these different intermediaries and get a hold of them and talk this out, and they refused, and then immediately after that, they posted the video online. Now, of course, grain of salt, she could definitely be making all of this up, but I guess I'm only willing to believe this because of how vague the Jenkinses were about what ultimately led them to decide to post the video to the Facebook page. But more importantly, Tatum launches an accusation that the man at the center of this, DeMichael, is actually just a grifter who's using this publicity to try and make some money on the real estate development courses he sells through his company 3D Visions, which I confirmed he is in fact actively selling these courses. And yes, I do think that selling a $1,000 course, probably full of information you could find for free on YouTube, is kind of scammy, and I find it interesting that he just happens to be selling this expensive course and is really laying into his success during his interview.
I'm proud to go home, Shannon. Something I want you to know is when they say it's an affluent neighborhood, it's one of the most wealthiest neighborhoods in Ohio.
Wow, congrats!
And my house is the best house in the neighborhood.
That's what I'm talking about.
Because
Come on now.
I designed it from scratch. I'm an architectural designer. I bought the land, I financed the land, designed it from scratch, and I built it from the ground up.
But on its own, while that does set off some red flags for me, it also isn't ultimately enough to convince me that he is actually grifting off this whole thing. However, Tatum later released another video, this time interviewing DeMichael's former recent business partner, and he has what are objectively some very interesting accusations.
We got into business about 2 years ago, and got into business as I met him at a real estate event. And then I wanted to get into new builds. He had a couple new builds underway already. what he expressed to me is that he had a contractor that was running those two new constructions run off with the funds. So he then needed a capital partner. Now, my company could provide the capital for these deals, as well as we're licensed and bonded general contractors as well. So we could run the project via our permits, the whole 9 yards. So we got into business. Fast forward, I've invested $303,000 to the dollar on one of the properties, and then on the second property, I invested $147,000. And come to find out, this whole entire time, I was pretty much just being used and taken advantage for the accessibility to the funds that my company could acquire.
So DeMichael Jenkins approaches this guy and says, hey, I'm building 2 houses, but my contractor who was helping me with the builds ran off with all the money that I need to finish the houses. So I need a new partner who has some money to throw at these projects to get them done. Our guy here says, yeah, sure, why not? And throws $447,000 at DeMichael's 2 projects. What he does to this guy next, according to this guy at least, is wild.
So you guys go into partnership. You were the financier of the projects. Mm-hmm. Why couldn't he finance anything? Like, why couldn't it be a mutual financial thing?
As we got through future deals and started closing loans on other lots and then put new construction, so we would get the lot and the construction loan all in one. So we just did one closing, one funding of that asset. I come to find out he didn't have tax returns, and his credit score was I believe a 500 at the time. So he didn't have tax returns, and he didn't have a credit score. Matter of fact, when we went to go close the loans, I had to go up to 90% guarantor on the loan, and he had to come down to 10%. We closed the loans under our business together, but I had to go up to 90% on the operating agreement, and he had to go down to 10%. When it came to finishing the deals, he basically abandoned them, and then what I was told through the attorney that represents both of us is that he thought, since he only was signing on the dotted line for 10%, that he didn't really have an obligation to see those projects out.
Jenkins had a 500 credit score and no taxes to show the bank, which, aside from being super sketchy and a huge red flag that this guy apparently ignored before going into business with him, also meant that he couldn't get any credit lines from the bank and had to rely completely on this guy's relationships to get his projects finished. And after this guy put almost $500,000 into Jenkins' builds for him, Jenkins abandoned the builds he promised to finish with all the money he had just borrowed using this guy's credit lines. And if that wasn't crazy enough, get a load of this.
As we're building these projects, the timelines on these projects are falling behind. The construction budgets are raising. I start to look into the books, and I'm starting to find out $100,000+ framing package got applied to my supplier line of credit, personally guaranteed. And I come to find out that a 6-figure+ lumber bill gets applied to my line of credit, but dropped off at that house over here. I don't want to say the address, the street name, but it gets dropped off at the house in the wealthiest neighborhood in Columbus, quote unquote.
So this guy is alleging, just to be clear here, he is alleging that DeMichael Jenkins used his personal credit lines that they were supposed to be using to build these houses together and used them to build his own house for himself. And all of these houses he was pretending to want to build with this guy was all a ruse so that he could use somebody else's credit to build his dream home, which he apparently couldn't build himself because his credit was so bad and he didn't pay his taxes, so he couldn't get the loan himself. Our guy here also tells us that the fallout of all of these actions from DeMichael Jenkins, of all the stuff that he did using his credit lines, was they had to fire all of their employees. Their parents had to come out of retirement, sell their home in Florida, and move back to rejoin the business to keep it afloat. And they are still in a really dark place because of all this. So this wasn't a small thing that DeMichael did to this guy. And these are obviously pretty gnarly accusations here, to which Mr. Jenkins has yet to respond. But obviously, one wrong does not right another. And the revelations here about DeMichael Jenkins's alleged dubious business practices doesn't make Michelle Bishop any more or less racist in her intent. And in order to get a better idea of her intent, I did some digging on Michelle's history as well. And Get a load of this. The ring cam footage is actually not Michelle's first time being laughed at online, and in fact, she has an entire ironic fandom of people who laugh at her vlog videos. Imagine my surprise when I searched Michelle Bishop's name and found Reddit archives, tons of them, mind you, going back as many as 7 years, where people have entire posts dedicated to the insane things that she was doing and saying. She was a blogger many years ago, and Reddit dishes so much tea on Michelle and her husband, John, who you'll remember from the interview. For one thing, Michelle appears to be quite the serial drama queen and has exhibited plenty of scammy behavior of her own. For one thing, she used to sell Advocare to her viewers, which is an MLM company that was literally charged for operating a pyramid scheme, and several people who have tried her workout program, the one she currently operates called Ladies Edge, says the exercises are anywhere between ridiculous and downright dangerous. We learn that Michelle had her husband, John, baptized in a horse trough in the parking lot of a strip mall, habitually seemed to lose, or as some have suggested, disappear her many adopted dogs as they became inconvenient to her life, and an absolutely jarring accusation that she used to buy 10 pallets of eggs, get ready for this, and then put them in a Ziploc gallon bag, cover them in Splenda, shredded lettuce, and mustard, and eat it throughout the day for all of her meals, which should be a jailable offense. She is accused by several people of stealing small creators' workouts for her platform, and seems to repeatedly have hysterical and dramatic meltdowns in front of the camera. If I was trying to answer the question, was she racially profiling her neighbor, or is she really just hysterical enough to freak out and think someone was following her and this was all just a big misunderstanding, had nothing to do with the guy's race, this actually didn't really help us at all. On the one hand, she is a hysterical and ridiculous enough person that this really could have just been an overreaction that had nothing to do with the guy's race. That would track. But also, she's apparently a scammy liar and a terrible person who sells pyramid scheme supplements, runs a nonsense workout subscription that many people have described as cult-like, and treats her dogs like accessories, among like 100 other accusations. But what do you think? Was Michelle acting out of racial bias, or did she simply have a genuine overreaction to DeMichael coming home to his own house, mistaking him for a young white man, as she repeatedly contends loudly and often? Is DeMichael a grifter trying to make a buck on all this, and do you believe his former business partner about the allegations made regarding DeMichael's conduct and destroying his family business? This comment section should be fun. See ya!